Hi, and welcome to 40 Gray, the podcast by two 30-something dudes whose adult lives and responsibilities, of which they have many, have not yet eclipsed their zeal for stupid, nerdy shit. From Warhammer to video games to your favorite hemorrhoid cream. I don't know why that came to mind, but okay. If it's your fandom, we're your tandem. Tom, how you doing? How those roids doing?
It's been a long week.
Yeah, it's been...
Do you have a favorite hemorrhoid cream?
I mean, so I'm gifted. You know, we shouldn't really joke, right? Because we're at the age where like that's going to be a thing pretty soon.
Right.
But I feel like Preparation H had the best commercials.
The Ring of Fire.
Yeah, exactly. I almost wonder if we should redo that or just go with it. Let's go with it. Why not? That's the power of improvisational comedy. So it's been a long week. You got your second child is on the way. So this is an episode we might actually be stockpiling for future, right?
Imminent, yes. So let's bank as many as we can.
So if you're, boy, how do I phrase this question? So there's, whenever you're having a kid, there's excitement and then there's a little bit of trepidation. Mm-hmm. What percentage, what's the breakdown between those two? Is it 50-50, 80-20?
Not so much trepidation. I'm just worried about how my toddler will do around a new baby. But you know, we've been through the process before. It's, you know, it's kind of old hat at this point.
So it's the actual bringing home a new child less scary, but now that the added element is like, how do we get your son, who's he's 3, right?
2 years, 8 months.
Okay, so pretty close. Okay, so he's just under 3. This is obviously going to be a huge disruption for him. Yeah, I don't know. How do you get a kid to be super psyched about having a sibling and not seeing it as a threat on their turf?
Well, we've already bought a bunch of toys and stuff for him that will be a gift from the baby to try to bribe him. So yeah, as long as he has new toys and he can keep himself occupied.
That's awesome.
We're just kind of playing it by ear.
But I think with my person, I have a younger brother who's obviously been on the show, and I was always super psyched about him. But that was in part, my parents told me it was my fault the entire time. They're like, "You wanted a baby brother, so you better take care of him. It's your fault." Which is probably why I'm a neurotic mess as an adult now.
Like that's something to cause a reason for blame. Like it's your fault. Having a brother was a negative thing.
I don't know, man. That was my childhood. Hey, let's change the subject. That got unnecessarily dark with hemorrhoid cream, the joy of new life, and then how not to raise children. We got
left turns everywhere.
Yeah. So many left turns. We're back at the beginning. Which is why, that's why we have 4 subscribers. Okay, so anyway, but who cares? We're still going to do it, goddammit, because we love it. I love it. Tom, what are your feelings about Citadel Paint?
So yeah, yesterday I asked you, do you think Citadel Paint is bad for the hobby? I'm curious what came to your mind when I said that.
It's a good question. So the only frame of reference I have is that I remember as a kid, this is going to be a long answer, and I don't know if it'll get to what you're intending, but I can just tell you what I think.
Okay.
The little pots that had the cool, like, branding and the little names. Yeah, just like that. Well, they were even cooler back then. They had like the little like work logo, like the Evil Sun's logo face.
Yeah.
There was this weird satisfaction I got out of owning them, because it felt like, oh, there's a collection and they're themed. It just felt cool. As an adult, I realized that they're drastically overpriced as compared to things like Vallejo or Vallejo, I'm not sure to pronounce it, which are great quality and do the same exact thing. I like the contrast paints because, as you know, there you go. That's a prime example. And some of it's better quality, I would say, too. Like the being able to have a dropper bottle that you can cut with water is great. Mm-hmm. I think it's better for airbrushes too, right?
Yeah, so Vallejo has a line specifically formulated for airbrushes, Game Air. You just pour it right in, and it flows pretty nicely.
So it flows pretty nicely, just like the gravy at a sweet, sweet all-you-can-eat buffet. Which, by the way, I was so excited because buffets started to come back. We just saw an ad for Golden Corral, and I was like, yes. And then it's like
Nope.
Delta variant, it's going away. No, I want to be fat.
If you were here last weekend,
Yum, yum, yum,
congratulations.
yum, yum. And that's why I have the beard, so I can catch food and eat it later, and also to cover my face. But I would so back to the point. Loved the branding as a kid. As an adult, it's expensive. It's not always the best quality. I like contrast a lot because I'm lazy and it enables me to have stuff that looks pretty good. I don't think it's necessarily bad for the hobby, but I do think that it's clearly part of how Games Workshop is trying to create income, because every single thing they do now has a guide for like how to use Citadel Paint to paint this thing. So I'm neutral. I don't care. I think it's overpriced, but you pay for the price. You pay for the convenience of having the guides and the ability to say like, hey, I'm purchasing something that's official if you choose to. So I'm ignorant about painting though, Tom. Tell me why everything I just said is wrong.
No, that's fine. So you're not terribly crazy about painting, right?
If it's a model I really, really love, then I do. It's like those Legion of the Damned that I painted. I absolutely loved painting them. I just really enjoy it, or Thousand Suns, or like some of the monsters I have. But like if it's like, oh, okay, I gotta go paint like 30 goblins for a Warcry team, then nah, I'm like, oh, let me just get through this as fast as possible.
Is there anything that's like physically stopping you from like painting a model and then, saying, I really enjoy this. I want to dedicate more time to get better at this craft. Like, is there anything specifically turning you off about it?
About just like the act of painting itself?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. I think it's that I'm a little bit of a perfectionist.
Mhm.
And I remember being younger in the hobby and just being so frustrated that I could not figure out how to make my stuff look like the pictures. And then as an adult, realizing, well, it's because you have to do, like you said, do homework, train yourself a little bit. And I think it's because to get things to a level where I feel proud of it or happy with it, it's so exhausting. Like, so like those Thousand Suns that I actually like how they look. Like I painted every nook and cranny, and then I went back and filled in the details where I screwed up and got out of the lines. And then I coded it 8 times and I did like the lines. But we're talking like 12 hours each. And it just feels very daunting to have, okay, I did one, now I've got 10 more to go. It's like, but I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. So I think for me, it's the perfectionism, knowing it's never going to look exactly like what I want to look like. And then the fact that it is so time consuming, and I don't have that much time to devote to the kind of the hobby. There's other things I'd also like to do with my time, like play stupid video games.
That too. Yeah, perfect. That's all.
Well, what about you? Tell me. So you are, I know, first of all, somebody who's constantly trying to improve their paint work, always looking at new techniques and tools. For you, does that time just go by, or how is that experience different from you than from what I just described?
Um, funny thing, when I very first got into the hobby, I fucking hated painting. Um, I had a shit ton because I just kind of bought up a whole bunch of models and then was left with a massive pile that I had to paint. Looking at 30 noise marines and God. So yeah, so I was like, all right, I have to paint all of these guys, and in order to be like playable, on the table, it needs to have at least 3 colors.
Yeah.
So black, pink, make the guns metal, good, bang it out. Like, like this is terrible. I hate this. I want no part of it. But I think a part of that was because of the way it was branded to me as a new player. I don't think Games Workshop puts much of an effort on the artistic side of the game. So they, like, it's very, this is how you do it. These are the colors you use to do it. This is the technique. They try to make it as easy as possible. And I'm just not a fan of that. Like the style itself, I couldn't really get behind until I did a little more research, and now I fucking love painting because I do it according to my own style. And I have a couple of bullet points that I would like to bounce off of you.
I want to hear him. Can I pull on one thread from something you said though?
Mhm.
Because you said like there's not a lot of art focus. And I think it's interesting. Like I mentioned, every model has like a list underneath of use these colors and use this technique.
Mhm.
But is your point, there's no emphasis on creativity. It's just how do I make this look like the thing in the picture?
Yeah, and I think that is a part of the accessibility. New players, you don't have to think too much about. Um, but it's almost become a part of the culture. Like when we played at the store, with a bunch of guys, and just everyone just had their whole armies according to the heavy metal style. And if it wasn't the approved color scheme, you got side-eyed, or it just seems, I don't know, not like indoctrination, but just
You're conforming. Yeah, no, but I think it's a good point. Like to just reflect on what I had said earlier with the Thousand Suns, I was trying to paint them to look like what I had always imagined they looked like based on the art I saw or the heavy metal. Like, I don't know what they call it. Is it still heavy metal? No,
it's like
with no age. So I
like
was like, it's got to be blue with gold trim and all the little, edifices and raised edges are gold. And that's what it looks like.
it's,
But with some of the other stuff, yeah, there you go.
it's terrible, but he's red and silver.
Yeah, well, you got to put your hand. Remember what Gabrielle said? If you want to, you got to
Oh
put
yeah,
your hand behind it so you can.
right.
But and the red and silver was like their original color. I think
Yeah,
the blue and gold is actually just Armin's warband, the Prodigal Sons, maybe. But
yeah.
but anyway, so I was trying to make it look like that's the thing I've seen for like 20 years.
Right.
With the Legion of the Damned, I was like, how do I make fire look cool? And I just had fun. And that's why, like, you're right. Like, I mean, it was black and everything was like kind of bone colored, but I just like kind of was creative. I was like, okay, I can make this any color I want.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to think if I have another army that I pay. Oh, it's Tyranids. Now, granted, I use contrast for those,
Mhm.
but I loved painting them. And part of the reason I loved painting them is I picked a color scheme that was accessible, but that I really enjoyed painting.
Right.
Because I could be completely, creative about it. Kind of like in that same, I remember that same store we're talking about, there was a guy who painted his bright yellow and like that weird bright blue of like Wolverine's little pantaloons. And they looked like Wolverine from the 90s. And that was his intent. He was like, yeah, they're the Wolverine Tyranids. Which I felt like I had like this freedom. I didn't feel the pressure. Like I have to make this ultramarine look like an ultramarine. It's like, it's a bug. I could paint it whatever the fuck I want to paint it.
Right.
And I know, anyway, so I'd love to hear your tips. Let's do, okay, here I'm going into pupil mode. Again, sagacious Tom with his flowing locks. Tell me about your painting tips.
uh, Not painting tips, just the sort of gripes I have, I guess. And I'll admit, I'm probably speaking to from a very small minority of people in the community, but this is just my point of view, and take it or leave it. I think the biggest thing, and Citadel, not Games Workshop, not only they're not the only ones that do this. Like every acrylic, miniature acrylic paint company, they have their own names for colors. You know, um, Citadel's Mephiston Red and Abaddon Black and all these, but Vallejo does it too. Warlord Purple, and because you can't trademark a color, and if you put Pantone P49 16C on the bottle, you know exactly what color you're getting, but you can get that color anywhere.
Got it.
You have, so if Citadel, if Games Workshop tells you right on the back of the box that you're
I get
bringing up
Bad Moon Yellow and
yeah,
Green Skin Flesh Green or something.
right up to the register with this brand new box of dudes you want to paint, and right on there on the box it tells you that the cloak is first you base it in Mephiston Red, then Evil Sun Scarlet, and finally Edge Highlight with Wild Rider Red. So now for that one part of the cloak, you need 3 paints that are what, $5 each.
If you're lucky.
Right. And if you wanted a cheaper option, you would have to, it makes it really difficult to say, okay, well, what is the equivalent of this color? Like, because it's obviously a color that exists. They didn't invent these colors. They just named them funny. So now you have to go out and see what a cheaper alternative would best match that color. And it's just way too complicated. It's easier for you to grab the pots off the shelf and buy them along with the box you bring into the register. But every company does that. It's not specifically GW's fault.
So is it like the gripe is like just that culture of trying to take something as unownable as color and making it proprietary?
Yes, because you very well, because if you really want to dive down a rabbit hole, you can study the color theory and mix your own colors for super cheap. But that requires a lot of time and effort. You're basically paying for convenience.
Yeah.
And I think, well, time and money are 2 resources. So if you want to save time, you have to spend money, and if you want to save money, you have to spend time. So it's different for everyone. So that's just how I feel about it, I guess. And the fucking paint pots, Jesus Christ.
I have spilled non-oil so many times. Like I was gutted, to use like a British expression. Like I spilled it. I felt like a kid again who had just spilled something they spent all their allowance on, and I was so devastated.
My pajamas are splotched with Caribou Crimson, and I've got all kinds of Agrax stains. Yeah, no. And even with the regular paints, the fucking lip on the back, and then paint drips down, and it gets in the seal, and then they dry out, and it's just awful. And the droppers are so much easier.
Why do you think they don't just use droppers?
Because
it forces you to use more, or
from what I heard, they don't want to get new machinery.
So that's the only reason. It's just they use pots, and getting droppers would be different machinery.
I don't know if that's the case, but the paint pots are 12 milliliter pots, and industry standard for the dropper bottles is 17 milliliters. So not only are you getting more paint with Vallejo and Army Painter and Scale 75, but they're also cheaper. So I think if they put it in a dropper bottle, they'd be forced to confront the fact that you're getting less for more money.
Or they'd have to completely redo like their distribution and pricing system.
Right. So I think that's just too much effort.
Okay.
Yeah, and like you said, but the spilling your shade, your wash bottle. What was, that's a common thing. What was GW's answer?
Oh, get the little base that you plug it into.
They sell you a fucking rubber base.
which I have, actually. That's Gabrielle got that for me.
Give us more money to fix a problem that we created.
I mean, I have that thing. Like I put it in. I do not let the shades come out because I know what'll happen. Yeah.
And if you're prone to spilling your shades more than the cost of the holder, then it pays for itself. But that's my thing.
Also makes a good stocking stuffer if you have somebody to buy it for, which was my case. But you're right. It is. It's like, yeah, we created a problem. Here's the solution.
Yeah, and the heavy metal style box art. I think I've talked about this before briefly, but the box art is amazing, right? The heavy metal style with the extreme edge highlighting, it really shows off all the details of the model. And GW's sculpts are super detailed. They're incredible. It really showcases that well. On the tabletop, it's really cartoony, and it just doesn't, in my opinion, does not look good. I don't think it conforms to the grimdark aesthetic they're trying to push forward. Like even with the codex art, this super grim, pictures of battle scenes. John Blanche back in the day, amazing artist and illustrator. And then on the tabletop, you've got these three-dimensional cartoons that are bright and shiny, bright colored and clean and fun.
Well, do you remember the heavy metal stuff from the 90s where everything was a super bright primary color?
Yeah. What was it, goblin green around the rim?
Like, yeah, goblin green on the rims, and everything was either red or blue or yellow. And I loved it. Like, that's the thing too, is it was so fun, wasn't it? But you're right, like it is cartoony. Do you think they make it extra colorful to just try to sell more paint?
Definitely. But needing 3 different colors to do one section, 3 different paints to do one set. Well, 4, I guess, if you're going to wash it. Yeah. Well, like I said, it's great for marketing. Don't get me wrong. But I think once it's yours, it sort of loses something, on the tabletop.
It's funny though, like, so the Spawn guy, McFarlane Toys, they made some 40K toys.
Mhm.
And like, I was at Target the other day and I saw, they have a Blood Angels, I think a Hellblaster, that's the guy with the big plasma gun, the Intercessor guy, or Primaris. And first of all, I thought it was super cool to see Warhammer like in a mainstream situation. But the toy looked like crap. There was no detail compared to like with what's on these little tiny models. And I was just looking at it like, no player would put that on the battlefield. It's like the gun is one color, like it's just black and red. So I guess on the one hand it's cartoony, but you're right, like it creates these almost like unrealistic expectations too of what you have to do to be perceived as an actual like legit player. Like I remember coming in with some of my stuff kind of shoddily painted and people would judge me and treat me crappy.
But it just seemed like there was a disconnect to how clean and bright the models were compared to the atmosphere of the grim dark setting. They try to push how dark and bleak and hopeless this is, and the models are vibrant, and it seemed like there wasn't much of a.
That's kind of like an interesting lore point too. There's always the meme about like the normal Marines or the reasonable Marines where they're wearing camouflage. It's like, hey, what crack smoking dream would you be like, what, we've got all these legions, let's paint them bright ass colors to make them easy targets. Like, I'm bright blue, there's no environment except maybe the ocean. Yellow. Or some kind of strange alien Xenos world where all the flora is blue, where you're going to be even remotely not an easy target. Right. Or like bright yellow. Why? You know what I mean? Like, why? There's no reason. How have you not know about camouflage in the 42nd millennium?
Because fuck you, that's why.
Fair.
Anyway, no, but I think there are plenty of so I guess that brings me to the biggest thing. We talked about it a little bit before, that for a new player, there doesn't seem to be artistic freedom. It doesn't seem to be an option for you, or it's not an option that's presented to you unless you go searching for it. Because all the models on display at the store, and all the people, the majority of the players, are going to have heavy metal style going on, so you just kind of feel like that's what you need to do, even if you don't necessarily like it, and then you end up not wanting to paint your models because you don't like the style. But it's an art, just like any other art. There's different takes on how you can. This is just incoherent rambling at this point.
It's restrictive. Like it's well, so here's another great example of that. I forgot where I was reading this, but there was maybe it was Grimdank, somebody pointing out, like in the 90s when they would highlight these armies, like orc armies would have like random models, as looted tanks, or somebody was talking about they made like a land speeder out of a deodorant bottle. That's like pretty famous.
Mhm.
Like people would self-construct some of these models and they would feature them because they were super cool.
Right.
Right. And now they actually put limits on everything has to be either 100% Games Workshop, or there's a limit how much green stuff you can have.
Right.
It's all pushing conformity in the name of restricting competition. But you're right, it does take away some of that creative element. Like I don't know how many people out there like would actually actively convert stuff, but I definitely would.
Mhm. And I'm not trying to say that it sucks. Like to do the heavy metal style well, it takes a lot of talent. Just like painting anything, you don't have to like a particular style to know when it's done well. Golden Demon winners, the incredible painters, artists. But it for me, it's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
And it took, I think, too long for me to figure that out as a new player.
So it seems like the advice from this for new players or veteran players alike is don't feel like you have to do the thing which you see on the box or you see on the website to be taken seriously. Like allow yourself to be creative and tap into what you think is cool.
At the end of the day, you own the model. You paint it however you want. It's funny you mentioned the contrast paints before, because the heavy metal sort of the formula, I guess. You prime, do your base colors, you wash, you layer, then do your edge highlights, right? The contrast was meant to do the base coat and the wash in one. So you're still priming, contrast, layering, and edge highlighting. And the wash step was arguably the
easiest,
the fastest,
yeah.
Less time consuming of them. So it's almost like not really.
But for somebody like me who doesn't do a ton of edge highlighting except in a very few cases, because I think like the bare minimum is like base, layer, and wash. Then it's pretty good. If you're actually trying to make it look good, then no, it's not. But like you saw my Tyranids, they're fine.
Yeah, they look great.
Yeah, two different contrast colors. They look great. That's all I did. Two different contrast colors. Well, and I primed it. So primed it, two different contrast colors. Boom.
One
done.
thick coat.
Very thick.
But yeah, the contrasts are basically a glaze. It's a concept that's been around for a while, and they're extremely versatile. You could use them in different ways than just slapping it over a gray sear base coat. If that's the rabbit hole you want to dive down.
I think we should do a future episode where we do an actual paint tutorial.
Jesus.
Yeah. We'll do like a Tom one and then a Ben one. The Tom one will look good. The Ben one will not.
It still takes me hours to
takes me hours. Absolutely.
Because like you said, there's a lot of fiddly bits on, Chaos Marines. They have a lot of trim. And if I fuck something up, I got to go back over it a few times. My hand is not as steady as I'd like, but at the end of the day, I take pride in how it comes out. So I guess.
And on that note, taking pride, I think we can bring this one to an end. We learned a lot today.
And check out Marco Frassoni on YouTube and the Grimdark Compendium. I think highlight my style pretty well, because I feel like the Grimdark style. They try to have the models appear the way they should, given this reality. They're very weathered and just beaten up and rusted and battle damaged.
Oh, that's a really good point. Is you never see that on the heavy metal stuff. Like if you had an actual
Yeah.
Chaos Marine that's been fighting in the same armor for at least, I mean, they've been fighting for thousands of years, but the armor
Right.
is pieced together from other things. It would look like garbage.
Yeah. And Space Marines I could see because they have serfs, polishing their shit in between each battle. But yeah, most of your models are going to be just covered and caked in dirt and rust
And
have,
pitted and
yeah,
like there'll be damage and
scrapes and paint chipping.
or like in the various Black Library novels and stories, they're always covered in blood. I never see that.
Right.
Like just blood spray everywhere, you know?
So when you field a grimdark painted army against someone who does heavy metal, I tend to think that they're the noobs, just fresh off the assembly line with their brand new armor, and my guys are vets, combat hardened.
And filthy.
It's that immersion, you gotta.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
So we'll link those out in the notes here. Otherwise, Tom, what do we always say?
Good fight.
Good night. Yeah. Mash that like and subscribe button.
That too. Suck it.
Go to space camp.
Puerto Vallarta, Mexico.
Yeah, that's usually pretty much what we say, right?
That's where we cut it.
That's where we cut it. So we're going to cut it here. We'll
the
see you all.
Would have been playing at this point.
Yeah, the music. Well, it's going to be playing.
It would have. Yeah, it would have started already.
It probably started to. Yeah. Well, now I'm going to have to like add some extra music. Dun, 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 dun. I love that. Guys, Zapsplat does our music. Check them out. They do great work. And yeah. Bye.